thank you so much. Welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. Monday nights, 9 to 10 p.m. on ENCA. Our first ever full hour show, which allows us to do so much more and have so many more conversations. And we need to have a really important conversation now. You're probably familiar with probably the most toxic and high-profile celebrity on-off, are-they, aren't-they relationship in modern times in South Africa between the independently extremely famous Mihlali Ndamase and Leeroy Sidambe. And one part of their relationship, which makes it so different from other celebrity relationships, such that we would talk about it, is the fact that they consistently seem to both emotionally and physically abuse each other and perform that abuse through Instagram stories, pictures of bruises with tagging the other with love you and heart, and, you know, public official media statements, press releases. And so I think it's really important in a country where gender-based violence is such a serious disaster, and South Africa is one of the worst places in the world to be a woman, to talk about how I can't even think of many or any major celebrity relationships in other countries which are so publicly performed. The abuse is so publicly performed. And so it's a really important conversation that we're going to talk about now. And for that, we welcome back friends of the show, two people who I absolutely adore. They have a podcast called The Know-It-Alls, which I believe is the only podcast where you can hear the latest goss from the ultimatum straight into Frantz Fanon. And that's why I love them. Fezokuhle and Mthonti and Ayanda Charlie are here. Thank you so much, guys. Genuinely adore your podcast. Now, this is a really, really heavy topic. Fezi, I want to start with you because I would like to get your initial thoughts on it's a long-running relationship. Yeah. And in the last few weeks, in particular, Mihlali posted those Instagram stories, Leeroy responded, and it's just so awful the way that it's publicly performed. What are your initial reactions to this story?
The kind of public shame doesn't necessarily stick on Leeroy in the same way that it's been sticking on women. And we know that because that is a function of misogyny and patriarchy. Mm-hmm. But I think there are multiple ways that we need to kind of think about this. I have some thoughts that I want to have about what beauty is and how we think about beauty and our suspicions around beauty. So, of course, we know the ideas around pretty privilege. We typically think that pretty privilege can afford us. In fact, studies have shown that people that are considered more desirable are kind of understood as more competent, as more, thoughtful, and we give them all of our money.
Then they get the jobs.
Yes, they get the jobs.
TikTok
on
sponsors.
Grey's Anatomy, the only thing that makes everyone competent is how beautiful they are. It's just like a bizarre thing that we've kind of done. But it's interesting because Mihlali is an objectively beautiful woman, right? We all know that to be true. But she's also a really smart woman in that she's leveraged her beauty to make a business.
She's a phenomenal business person.
A very good business person. And part of the success of her business is the fact that she's in fact incredibly hyper visible, right? And this is interesting because women that are also deeply hyper visible, their pain and their struggles are invisibilized in various ways and very serious ways politically. Yeah.
They're invisibilized even as they're hyper visible. Yes. Say more about that.
So Mihlali, for example, has she has 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yeah. She has 2.3 million Instagram followers. Okay, so this is a woman who's in our faces all the time. But because of that, and because of our kind of parasocial relationships with these people, where we've created relationships with people that we don't know, and so because of that, we make judgments about people that we don't know, and we are available to shame them, or we are available to put them at a particular moral standard, or whatever thing that we have. We have to realize that's a voyeuristic relationship, and it's not in fact real. And so what often happens is that these people are losing their humanity with their proximity to us every day on screen, every day.
They're enslaved to us.
Yes, right? And so we don't necessarily see them as people, as legitimate human beings who are worthy of empathy and compassion.
So when Mihlali then suffers, we don't treat it as real suffering of a human being.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
And we have a lot of different things that we then use to make sure that we make that shame available. So we call her a baddie. We call her a slay queen, which, by the way, used to be really interesting ways in which women used to delineate themselves. They used to say they're self-assured, they're, popular, they're beautiful.
Independent women.
Independent women. And then misogyny came in.
Yeah, sure.
Misogyny came in and said, in fact, no. What a slay queen is a gold digger, is an opportunistic person.
So Leeroy is getting away scot-free for being a physical abuser in a country of gender-based violence, and Mihlali is being stained relentlessly by all of this. Ayanda, what are your initial thoughts on what Fezia said?
Oh, I mean, it's Fezokuhle Mthonti.
An icon and a superstar.
But certainly her humanity has been invisibilized. And solely in part because she is famous, and so I fully agree with what Fezi is saying. But I think in terms of how it shows up in how we hear her story, you'd be surprised as a man to realize that that is quite a universal experience for women, right? Like your story is never quite heard, but as it's not being heard, it's also being picked apart. We saw that initially when Mihlali put out the image, right, of her battered face, not really saying anything about Leeroy except for thank you, my love, right? Of course, ironically. And then what we get from Leeroy back is a statement. The first fully worded, detailed statement of his version of events. And from that statement, what I observed was that the behavior and the discourse around what was happening or what had allegedly happened became defined by the terms that Leeroy brought into the conversation. So Leeroy makes the claim that Mihlali is the one who is toxic. He alludes to her potentially having a substance abuse problem. He claims that she brought a knife into the house, barricaded over his son, and went into his room to attempt to kill him, to which he responded with a plea. And then, this is my favorite line, he said, he defended himself, pushed her away, and she made contact with the wall. Right? That is, it sounds like I fell from the 5th floor, I slipped on a bar of soap. It doesn't really come together.
It sounds like she was walking on the street and a bird flew into her.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Like
How does exactly
abstract.
As the audience, as the South Africans who are very much familiar with abuse, either firsthand or from media or from just our communities, what our reactions were very interesting to me because number one, no one scrutinize Leeroy's statement quite to the degree that they scrutinize Mihlali's statement, right? Took it at face value and then immediately leapt to it's mutual. This is my treatise today. I do not believe in mutual abuse because abuse happens when there's a power imbalance. Now, Mihlali is someone who's admitted to dating older men from a young age, right? And so she's someone who would posture quite confidently towards a white man and being in a relationship, not a white man, sorry, I just happen to be looking at one, towards an older man.
Whole Sunday world, she's alive, me and Mihlali, baby.
That would be great.
An older man.
Who's doing matchmaking? But she would be quite confidently in a relationship with an older man. And so, like we've seen in interviews she's done recently about the relationship, she presents as a strong, non-violable woman who is very familiar with this kind of man and relationship.
Too powerful to hurt.
Exactly. Right? And also too loose to be a victim. Right? In that conversation that I'm referring to in that interview, Mihlali is making a case for how, number one, she's not a mistress, why she's not a homebreaker. She's essentially defending this relationship. And so what has happened since then is that people have decided that Mihlali is due a comeuppance for not only being everything that we do not deem good women to be, but also being a homebreaker. And so how she's being read is someone who cannot be violated. And on top of that, Leeroy is being read as someone who cannot lie.
But also, and this is such a classic thing when women are blamed for wrecking homes, men are the helpless victims of womanhood. Men can't, like my poor man, you took him and his privates into your bed away from his loving wife and his children. And so men are rendered the total victims, unable to make another choice until men beat women and destroy their lives. It's really like, Fezi, we're almost going to run out of time. I'd love last words from you and Ayanda. Guys, thank you so much.
Like you've said, these women are, or rather these men are these little victims and poor babies, but they're the ones that have created the patriarchal system in which we live in, right?
Yeah. And continue to benefit from it.
Exactly. And so the power dynamic, the power shift, the power imbalance is squarely on the men within the society.
Totally.
But we then distrust the victims. We place an enormous burden on women and folks that are non-binary, that are queer, that are marginalized. And those are the people that we put distrust on, despite the fact that the kind of social engineering of the society in which we live has made it so that they are the most vulnerable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ayanda, take us on.
Listen, my last words are only 8% of GBV cases that make it to trial actually end in conviction. And so there is no incentive for women to report abuse, never mind lie about abuse. Only 2% of accusations about abuse actually happen to be fraught and not make it to trial. But there is often more reason to believe than not believe.
Yeah.
Totally. I love this job because I just get to invite really smart people to tell me what they think, whether they like it or not. The Know-It-Alls podcast. Fezi, Mthonti, and Ayanda Charlie, thank you so much for that absolutely crucial discussion. And coming up after the break in our final interview, I get to welcome one more person who I just want to listen to their thoughts and have her talk at me, because esteemed journalist Ferial Haffajee is in the building. She's going to be telling us about the latest mayoral dramas and messes and what is the fate of, I'm sorry, Cape Town, the most consequential South African city. This is the Dan Corder Show. See you in a second.